You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Loman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Loman.
Welcome. It's always sunny here at the House of Sunny podcast, mostly because I'm here, your host, Sunny. I'm here with Sidekick Doug from The Rational Capitalist. This is our 4th of July special, and we're going to talk about the state of culture and politics in America today. Hey, Doug, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. How are you?
Good. Happy Independence Day.
Well, thank you. Happy Independence Day to you, too. I hope you had a great time and a nice day off yesterday.
Yeah, I did. So I live in a pretty small town, as you know. I live in Sonoma, California. There's about 10,000 people here, but lots of tourists. And our 4th of July parade here is rated one of the top in the country, I guess.
They rate that? Who
Apparently,
rates it?
I don't know. Somebody
the parade people?
The City Council of Sonoma rates it. But
the national organ, the Chamber of Commerce.
The people who put on the parade rate it. No,
the UN.
Right. Yes. We need an impartial judge. Like, we need somebody from Saudi Arabia to judge our
or Nigeria, yeah,
our 4th of July parades. But yeah, so we're just hanging out at the. It's a really cute parade, but I expected something a little bit better. I have this romanticized, nostalgic vision of what 4th of July parades maybe were in the 50s in America, when people were more patriotic. I don't know if you saw this Gallup poll that came out that only 47% are extremely proud to be Americans or something like that.
They haven't heard that song yet. Proud to be an American.
Yeah, if only they'd heard that song.
You got to hear that song like 50 times and you're good.
And then you're done. You're brainwashed. And then Gallup comes along and you're like, yes, I'm proud to be an American.
Right, it just flows off the tongue.
But I was looking at that Gallup poll actually, and they only give you on the Gallup site, they only start at like 2001, and it actually surged in 2002. I'm sure it's a post 9/11 surge, right? So
sure.
Between 2001 and 2002, it surged. And then we've been sort of steadily declining since then.
Then we attacked the wrong country.
Yeah, then we attacked the wrong country. And so, our surge of patriotism lasted. Bush just completely squandered that capital. And by 2006, it was like down to 55%. Like, it went up to 70% are proud to be Americans in 2002. 70%. Extremely proud to be Americans. Bush lost that. It goes down to 55 or so, 57, 2006. And it didn't get any better when Obama was elected. Like, Obama's election didn't make people go, yay, now I'm really happy to be an American. And it was just stagnant. And then it started dropping like a stone in 2013, 2014.
It's the economy plus Obama.
Yeah.
Telling America sucks.
And now it's down to 47%. So it's not, and I don't know what it was like before 9/11. The Gallup chart does not show that. I can do some more. I suppose if I were like a real political commentator, I would have done that research before discussing this
like
poll.
if you had a podcast.
If I had a podcast or something, I might do the research. But I didn't. I'm just looking at what they put out and
Okay, hold on a second. But 47% now. What is that steadily declined from 70 to 47, or did you say had it spiked up at all, or is this like the low?
This is the low from 2001 to today. This is definitely the low. Like in 2016, it was 52%. I'm sure Trump's election really freaked some people out, but 52% to 47% is not that great. It's not a huge difference.
Right.
It could be margin of error there too, but it was really stagnant under Obama. It kind of stayed at 57% from 2006 to about 2013.
Okay.
So end of Bush, Obama, everybody just kind of was like the same percentage, 57%. But at least it was like the majority of Americans were extremely proud. And now less than a majority of Americans are extremely proud. Are you proud to be an American, Doug?
Well, yeah, of course I am.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of waffle. Like
Depending on what that means.
Yeah, I mean, if it's in the old sense of like, I'm very proud of my country and how it was founded, and the ideas that it was founded on and really worked well under. I'm proud that we are the only country in the history of like the fucking mankind that has been founded on the freedom of the individual here. And
Right.
and then I'm really proud of like the consequences of that and how we are in this great place. But of course, we all know that it's not the same anymore. So
Well, okay. I'll say something about that
Yeah.
in a minute, because I've been thinking about this a little bit though too. I mean, I think we have a really distorted perspective of this, and I think this came to me when I read this millennial. It was like a short little, I was like tweet level kind of a thing, where this millennial was saying, "We're not the ones who ruined the country. You did." You know, speaking to like our generation, the generation after our generation, older than millennials. You know, "You ruined our country. It's now a country of racism and police brutality." And
Yeah, right.
blah blah blah. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. They live
Like,
in this
if you-
incredible place.
This is like relative to where the
Yeah.
world was. Here, this kid is got some phone, right, that can speak to anyone in the universe instantly, and
Yeah.
you know,
He has the world's knowledge at his fingertips.
literally in his hand is the sum total of mankind's knowledge, which he gets for practically nothing. He's probably living with his mom. And anyways, despite everything that's wrong, that we would all disagree with what's wrong, but you and I would probably agree, and a lot of people would disagree. But anyways, this is an amazing time. I mean, this is
Yeah.
essentially like a utopia. And
Yeah.
even if you look at if you listen to someone like Steven Pinker, who actually goes through historical stats for hundreds of years of things like poverty and life expectancy and crime
Yeah.
and all the things we'd associate with quality of life, everything's gone up. Everything's gotten
Right.
better. Crime's gone, even though we perceive crime to be getting worse, crime's actually gone down massively since the 70s. You know, basically by any statistical measure, our lives are unbelievably great. And yet,
And they're great
Here
because
we
of
are.
freedom. They're great because of freedom. Yeah, there's not a lot of racism. I mean, even all the screaming about the racism that's seen on the right just isn't there. It's just not
Yeah.
there. And now I'm seeing that people on the right are pretending to be racist. Like they're not even really racist. They're faking it to say F you. You know?
Well,
They're
and-
like,
and this
"Oh, you
is-
want racism? You're going to call me a racist? I'll show you a racist." It's like it's definitely not real. If they ran into a person in person, they would judge them as an individual. I mean, a lot of people on the right. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, there are some racist people, but
or the racism, I think now today is more on the left.
it's all on, it's so on the left. This anti-white
obsessed with
hatred. They are obsessed with race. They're just obsessed with it. And then they accuse everybody on the right of hating brown people. Oh,
Brown, yeah, it's a
I'm
new
so
one.
tired of that word too, brown. Like,
Ugh.
I just can't
Yeah.
stand that for some reason. It's like, talk about a leftist word. But speaking of like the millennials complaining about the generation before them ruining the country, that's what I think about the baby boomers. That's what
Correct.
I think. I think they were, and they did. They kind of did. I mean, obviously things were going in that direction, but these activist baby boomers that turned things, that really changed the culture in the 60s. If you look at what the culture was in the 50s and look at what it was in the 70s, just think
Yeah.
about that. Women in white gloves and hats and men in hats, and things were pretty formal. Sex was not loose and open. Like you still were expected to get married before you had sex. Drug use was not.
And that was good or bad?
I'm not saying good or bad. I'm saying, well, I mean, I personally think, I guess I like it better. I like people who have more dignity and honor and take themselves a little more seriously better. I think it's better for your self-esteem than this loose sex that's now pervasive and, among young people, the hookup culture or whatever. You know that hurts people.
Yeah.
I mean, people really are damaged by that, and it's not cool. Like, they think it's cool, but it's really actually not cool. I'm not saying you should. I'm like an atheist, libertarian kind of type politically. I'm not saying you should be buttoned up, and I kind of like some of the freedoms, and I like a lot of the. I like how open the world is for women now.
But it's not a false alternative to be a libertarian and also have high objective moral standards.
Yes, I agree.
That's a false alternative.
But I guess it is a false alternative, but it's the image of that sort of really uptight Christian, and I actually think that's wrong. If you went back to the 50s, how much of that is really religious or just cultural? Just it was cultural that women were a little more dignified than they are today, that they were to be respected, that you had to impress her parents, that men had to have a plan to support their wife. And that is like, for whatever reason, that has become something stupid and uncool and then girls, you get to a certain age and you want to have a baby and you need a man to fucking support you. It's like, whoa, wait a sec. Like, I didn't realize this was a thing. I didn't know that I had to, some women choose to work right after having a baby, but in general.
Well, that's not just the 50s. That was all of mankind's history,
right?
For good reason.
I personally like having a man who is productive, and I actually think that's a character issue. And if women judged men based on their earnings and earning potential, how hard they're working and how ambitious they are, I think those are good qualities to look for in a man. But anyway, not to dwell on this 50s to 70s change, but just then in the 70s, people are getting high everywhere. They're having loose sex everywhere. Like, everything's loose. The 60s was a really pivotal decade. Mm-hmm. And these people are now, these aging kind of white hippies are the ones who did that. And they're the Hillary Clinton generation,
Totally.
And they're authoritarians. I mean, they talked about free speech and everything at Berkeley, but they were really authoritarians. And I remember Ayn Rand writing about the people at Berkeley who were the so-called free speech advocates or activists who were doing the sit-ins. And, they want to be able to hold a sign that says fuck on it on campus and sit in somebody's office forever, never being thrown out. Like, that's some sort of freedom issue.
Yeah.
Which it obviously, that's not.
They wanted someone to pay for a platform for them.
Yes.
That if they wanted to speak, someone else had to provide it. That was and they weren't after free speech. They were just after power for their political.
That's right. And that is more and more obvious today than ever. But just to get back to my 4th of July experience, like, it was really great, except for the aging white female hippie that I ran into. And it's I live in California, and I'm sorry if you're an aging white female hippie, but honestly, you are probably the worst person. And I hate running into that demographic. Ugh. They're always nasty. And in this case, the way it works in my small town, you go either the night before or you go in the morning and you set up your blanket and chairs. And this is what's done. This is the tradition. This is culturally what's done here. And then you come down to the parade and your stuff is set up, and everybody does that. And we did that. We went there at 5:30 in the morning or something, put a blanket down and some chairs down on the parade route. And we get there, and of course, some aging white hippie woman has moved my chair over 2 feet. So now I'm like all squished in with my family, and she's put a chair there, but not for herself, for a ginormous, mentally ill black man.
What?
And she had 2 chairs set up for 2 mentally ill black people. And she was part of some group that had like a bunch of chairs to the left of us. And so these chairs were kind of in the back, and like, they're not giving up their seats. They were moving our seats to make room for these people that they wanted to help.
And they didn't ask you? They just did.
No, we weren't there, because we hadn't shown up yet. I mean, we came an hour before the parade, but prior to that, this woman moved our chairs. And it's a typical leftist who's not giving up her space for these charity cases. She's giving up your space for these charity cases.
Yes. You were drafted into her.
Yeah. And then we got there and it was so obvious that we were put out by it. And she's just like, well, there was room. There was a little room to the left of my blanket, but not enough for a chair. Right. So, but that's where she put the chair. And therefore half the chair was on my blanket and moved my chair over. So anyway, whatever, you just kind of swallow it and you're like, hey, I'm an American. She's an American. We're going to be Americans today and not get in a fight. But I'm thinking to myself, typical goddamn California aging white leftist who just wants to I'm going to be this charitable person and be nice to these mentally ill black people by making you give up what you rightly deserve because you showed up at 5 a.m. I wasn't here at 5 a.m, but you were here at 5 a.m. But so what?
Yeah.
And you need to do the right thing and let these black people sit with you. Like she basically was kind of moralizing to me a little bit when I started sort of showing a little bit of dissatisfaction at the situation through my facial expression or whatever,
Was this all under the surface or did you guys have words or was this just all passive-aggressive behavior?
Totally passive-aggressive behavior. I was about to make it assertive behavior, but I decided it's 4th of July and I'm not going to do it.
You're not going to accost the woman with the mentally ill people.
Yeah. Well, she was with some kind of old...
Sonny, you're a great American.
Thank you. I did my part.
You are just
I did my part
outstanding.
For peace and serenity and civility in my country.
I think Thomas Jefferson would be proud of you.
I think so too.
You moved over.
Sam Adams, on the other hand, would be like, you fucking pussy.
Yeah, should have fought. Should have shot her with a musket.
I don't know who to go with more, the rabble rouser or the George Washington type.
Should have dropped some tea in the river while you were there.
Yeah. Anyway, but that type of person is just everywhere here, and
oh yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah. But here, California, for whatever, it was the magnet for that.
Capital of that.
60s activists, especially Bay Area, California. So anyway, the parade was cute. It was good. But anybody who was really good was old. So it's like these old people remember maybe what it was like and they put effort into their little thing that they're doing. And everything else was super half-assed except the Mexicans. Okay? I'm sorry to say this, but they had the best floats. The best floats.
Really?
The most exciting, the most interesting. They put the most time and effort into it, clearly. And they were the most patriotic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's sad.
It's so sad. I mean, I'm not saying us white people, whatever. It's not a brown issue or whatever. These were Mexican floats in the sense that they were floats not advocating, but saying Mexican culture. They were Mexican culture floats. So the women were dressed up in traditional Mexican garb and they were music. And then there were these guys on horseback on these dancing horses with sombreros and stuff. So it was a very Mexican cultural thing, but they were all decked out in the red, white, and blue.
Interesting.
Like pro-America. And they were really exciting and they were playing music and that's when you really started enjoying the parade. So it was old people and the Mexicans. Where are the young, creative Americans? Where's the youth and the enthusiasm,
They've been beaten down.
I guess.
It's been beaten out of them through propaganda from kindergarten on. Right. America's terrible.
America's
you're
terrible.
Don't feel guilty.
Yeah. You're not supposed to put any effort in or enthusiasm into loving America.
No, that would be, in fact, isn't that considered to be like a Nazi tactic to even...
Right. You might get labeled a far right winger if you wear an American t-shirt.
Well, wasn't Facebook just flagging Declaration of Independence posts?
Yeah,
as
I saw that.
hate?
Yeah, I saw that.
So that tells you where Americans are at.
Right.
And yet the people that want to come here are the people that probably appreciate it.
What Doug's talking about is that on some small paper was printing excerpts from the Declaration of Independence every day for 9 days leading up to the 4th of July. And when they got to the part where they mentioned something about Native Americans slaughtering people, That post was removed as being discriminatory, but however, it was removed by the bot, and when there was kind of an outrage about it, Facebook did reinstate it and apologize. So it was an auto, it was AI. Hey, we have a joke. I want to play that, and then we'll get into the rest of this. Yeah, we have a joke.
It's that.
Here we go.
Joke for you. First time father's taking his turn feeding the baby some string peas, and naturally there's food all over the place, especially all over the kid. Wife comes in and looks at the kid, then at her husband staring into space and says, "What in the world are you doing?" He says, "I'm waiting for the first coat to dry so I can put on another. Bye."
Pretty good.
I like it.
I like it. Call them in if you want to call in a joke for next week. The number is 707-681-5834, and we'll play it because we play them all. And I think I will be less lazy next week and actually come with a joke or two of my own.
Do we need to discuss last week's joke? Because a lot of people wrote in that it was prophet, like Jesus prophet.
Yeah.
And I knew that when I heard the joke, about the Roman arena and their lions are eating all the prophets.
Right.
But I still didn't really get it.
So my brain didn't even go to that word for prophet, because I'm such a non-religious person. I was raised with nothing. I know, like, those words, those concepts they're not right there. They're not in, the shallow access part of my brain. So I don't know. That wasn't that funny of a joke. Let's not dwell on that too much today.
Right.
So we've talked about the 4th of July. So there are a number of articles out today commenting on this New York Times article that came out this week regarding the First Amendment. Basically quoting Justice Kagan that the right is weaponizing the First Amendment. And some people are taking issue with that, and I was thinking to myself, but it is a weapon. Like, it's the number one weapon for us to use against tyranny.
That's an amazing package deal, that using speech to advocate for a position is equal to a weapon, a form of violence.
A form of violence.
If I argue my position and I believe in it and I express that, I'm trying to assault you. I'm trying to hurt you.
I get that, but at the same time, she's right that it is a weapon in a way, I mean, it is such a power. It has to be crushed in order to have tyranny. It seems to me. I mean, because even when people are voting in for tyranny and stuff, it's just not possible for it to last if people are getting the truth and people are able to say what they want. It just doesn't last. No regime lasts under free speech, which is why it's always crushed. So it's a weapon against tyranny. But yeah, using that word, which usually just applies to violence, is a little bit shady.
If she said it's a weapon against tyranny and it's a means to prevent an authoritarian society from taking root, and this is why dictatorships, the first thing they do is crush free speech by taking over the media and the newspapers and jailing dissenters. I mean, this is step one to dictatorship. So if she meant it that way, it would be one thing, but I bet that's not. I didn't read the article, so I'm just going by what you just said.
Yeah, so in the article, I can read you a little bit, so I'll just read it. On the final day of the Supreme Court term last week, Justice Elena Kagan sounded an alarm. The court's 5 conservative members, citing the First Amendment, had just dealt public unions a devastating blow. So this is the ruling that said that public unions can't force people to pay them money. Okay?
Right. Yep.
So the public unions, this is, government unions, which are in bed with government politicians, and they have tons of money because they can force all of these workers to pay them union dues.
Well, they can force the taxpayers to fund because if it's a government worker, we're paying taxes to them, and half their activities is political lobbying.
Right.
So they're effectively using taxpayer money to lobby the government for more taxpayer money.
Right. And they have destroyed state after state with these incredible pensions that are just, they're bankrupting state after state after state because it is a fucking racket. It's like a Ponzi scheme racket that these public unions have figured out. And part of the reason why they're so successful is because they can force all of these people to pay into dues. So the Supreme Court said, no, they can't do that anymore. And okay, so that's that. And here's more from the article. The day before, the same majority had used the First Amendment to reject a California law requiring religiously oriented crisis pregnancy centers to provide women with information about abortion. So in this case, the California law said, oh, you want to help women who are pregnant and you're Christian and you're against abortion, well, that doesn't matter. You still have to tell them about abortion.
Ugh.
So that's forcing people to advocate for something that they literally think is murder. Like,
right.
You've got to go support murderers. And whatever you think about people who are against abortion, the vast majority that I speak to, that is their objection. They think that it's murder.
Right.
So anyway, you shouldn't, even if they're dead wrong and they're crazy religious. Oh, geez, Louise. Sorry, I had my phone on because I was playing the joke. Even if they're crazy kooks who say a UFO is coming and we're going to drink some Kool-Aid and get on that UFO as we ride it off into the solar system. Right. I mean, you can't say, oh, hey, you people, you need to now advocate for our point of view. And that's wrong. I mean, that isn't even just, you can't say, we don't want you to say what you are going to say. That's saying you need to say what we want you to say. That's forcing people to say something they don't want to say.
Yeah, because they're not saying, okay, by saying these words, you're causing some injury or harm. You know, like you're telling a pregnant woman, hey, you should really take a saw and cut that out, or, you know, something crazy and dangerous. They're saying, we want you to
advocate,
say these words, advocate for a
they're giving they're putting words in their mouths. That's exactly right. It's forced speech. And so that was the
Sorry
other
about
one.
the saw.
Yeah, that's really awful. That was a horrible analogy, Doug. Jesus.
Thank you. I'm very quick on
I'm a very visual person. That was just okay. So more from the article. Conservatives, said Justice Kagan, who is part of the court's 4-member liberal wing, were weaponizing the First Amendment in those two rulings. Those two rulings, which is a case of people being forced to do something. They're not even being shut up. They're being forced to speak.
Wow.
In both of these cases, and by ruling and saying, hey, that's against the First Amendment, Kagan thinks that's weaponizing the First Amendment.
Well, first of all, you're right that she's right in the sense that free speech does underlie so much public policy when you really get down to it. You know, all these cases regarding freedom of association, freedom of speech, you know, with the Christian Baker and the cases that you just cited, those are free speech issues.
Yeah.
So absolutely, it's powerful. And this is our first, our first defense against tyranny is the First Amendment. And without it, you can see how quickly things go awry. And so she's right in that sense. Of course, that's not what she means. She means that, oh my God, they're citing the First Amendment to overturn laws and policies that I don't like.
Exactly.
And that I think are bad. So therefore, it's a quote unquote weapon. And that's what she really means. And that's what the left isn't for free speech. They're for
only for
their
themselves.
Policy
right.
And their power.
They're literally for power and themselves. And this article is so clear that way. And this is a New York Times article, so it's super slanted. But here, you guys are going to love this. Here's some more from the article. This is a quote from some law professor at New York University. The right, which has been for I'm gonna do a snotty accent. This is Bert Newborn, a law professor at the New York University. The right, which had for years been hostile to and very nervous about a strong First Amendment, has rediscovered it. You get that? People on the right, you are traditionally the hostile ones to the First Amendment, which isn't true. And then he goes on to say, or then he quotes another. What is it here? There's something that was really funny where they basically attributed, said something like the right is, building on the liberal arguments for free speech. It's like, oh, go F yourselves. How about the founding fathers' arguments for free speech?
Right.
We didn't get those arguments from the left.
By the way, I think this guy needs to blow his nose. Does he just have a cold, or is that how he really talks?
He's a snot.
So this is how he talks. Okay.
He's talking through his sinuses.
I was going to say, you might want to have that checked.
I'm only guessing. What a snot-nosed person he is. So anyway, that's what happened. That's in the New York Times. That article's out there. And we're weaponizing the First Amendment. So now we're violent because we want free speech. Because not just because we want to say what we want to say, but because we don't want to have to say what the left wants us to say. That to me is even that is a whole other level of First Amendment freedom. And then, and by the way, that's the one that Jordan Peterson objected to in Canada when they started telling him it wasn't about, it was about forced speech that he first stood up against.
Yeah, the pronouns.
Yeah, but
forcing it wasn't just
him,
that he wouldn't use them. They wanted to force him to use those pronouns.
Right, exactly.
Under threat.
So then, we had a week ago, we had Maxine Waters advocating for harassment of people on the right. And she did say cabinet members, in an atmosphere where a senator was shot and, Senator Ron Paul was beat up by his neighbor. I mean, we got this atmosphere of violence. Antifa's running around. Maxine Waters advocates harassment of Trump's cabinet. And now there's a viral video out there right now of this guy taking a MAGA hat off an obviously skinny, nerdy teenage boy's head and throwing soda in his face. And this guy is a big man. And it turns out he worked at a bar. He looks like maybe he was a bouncer. So really intimidating older guy goes up to some skinny little kids and takes his MAGA hat from him and calls them names and stuff. And that video is viral. The guy's name is Jimenez Kino.
The target or the attacker?
The attacker, Jimenez Kino. So that happened, and they're just going to get more violent, I think. They're really, they've gotten very emotional. They don't listen to reason. They don't want to. They don't want to talk. Their leaders are advocating for shutting us up. And not only that, but putting forced words in our mouths. Mm-hmm. And, and now we have this other, I think of the culture as two speeding trains. One is going in one direction and the other's going in the other direction. One is a well-funded, high-speed commuter. And that's the left, trying to take us toward, this totalitarian state. And the other is an old school steam engine, maybe running on wood power. It's not even coal. You have to chop down a whole bunch of trees just to get up one hill.
Wood chips. Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're at. But I do feel like it's gaining ground on our side too. And it seems like the more stark these lines are drawn, and Trump is part of this, and I know that there are a lot of people on the right who, I'm going to throw myself into this ring here. I didn't love Trump. I thought he was going to be really dishonest and really horrible. I thought he was basically going to be a Democrat. But he's turned out not to be a Democrat. So I'm kind of pleasantly surprised about that. And I do like, his style doesn't bother me. And I do like that he pushes back on the cultural left. And I think we kind of did need somebody like that. I thought Ted Cruz could do it, but I do like that Trump is more blunt about it.
Yeah.
And I think that as a result, he's creating sharper lines in the culture. We're seeing the left totally become unhinged. They're really going crazy.
But
with the violence and stuff, don't you think?
yeah, well, I don't think they're becoming unhinged. I think they're just exposing their true selves.
Yeah, right.
You know? And we said, I mean, before the election, after the election, I think one of the arguments I had made was that Trump's style is going to create this sort of stark contrast and really expose the true nature of the left, which is because we know in every, obviously Venezuela, North Korea, China, Russia, Cuba, on and on and on. Every time these people get power, what do? I mean, they start sending dissenters to jail. They take over the media. They nationalize industry. They create misery, stagnation, poverty, oppression, and they crush their opponents. I mean, this is what they are. This is what they do.
In every country, all over the world, wherever they are, this is what they do. And if anyone thinks they're different here in the U.S. because they're Americans, they're not.
And they try and call it democratic socialism, which is, their way of saying, well, people are going to vote for tyranny.
That is so confusing to me. Like, historically, I mean, Hitler got voted in. I'm supposed to think that's different. Chavez in Venezuela.
Yeah, he got voted in.
I don't care if somebody's more popular. And that's not the kind of country we have.
Right. Well, that's the idea of a republic versus a democracy. We don't have mob rules here. We have law.
Right.
And we have rights. And no matter how many, 99 out of 100 people can vote to take away your free speech, it doesn't matter.
Justice Kagan is not happy about that.
Of course.
She really doesn't. I mean, think about that for a second. A Supreme Court judge doesn't like the Bill of Rights.
And, but the point of the left is, this is what these people do. And now they're exposing themselves as violent, as not open to reason, not open to debate.
They're racist.
They're racist. They believe that everything, their view of the world is oppressors versus the oppressed. And everyone who's not, I guess, a white male now is a member of some victim class that's structurally a victim of racism or
well, you can add
whatever.
White women to that right now. White women are definitely not victims anymore.
Oh, okay. So we've gotten them out.
Yeah.
Women. I thought women in general were class.
White women are
too
privileged.
They got to shut up.
Yeah, we got to give space for the brown women.
So yeah, they have.
I mean,
this
that's
view.
why Amy Schumer was given shit because she did a movie where she played a girl who gets hit on the head and then she thinks she's pretty. And the theme of the movie is it's all in your attitude, that if you just stop hating on yourself, like you can be happy. And people are like, what? Amy Schumer is supposed to be like, she's this blonde, blue-eyed white woman of privilege and we're supposed to feel like there's something wrong with her? Oh my God.
Yeah, I love this idea that that equates anyone not in one of these groups as just this hapless, pathetic loser.
Yeah.
It's so demeaning and so condescending.
Let's scramble for who's the biggest loser. That is the left.
And this is what, and so when people say they're unhinged, they are, no question. I don't want to diminish how insane they are and how bad it's getting. And however, this is, and by the way, I wanted to mention this too, that I forgot her name, the Hispanic that won the New York congressional primary, that's the Democratic Socialist that everyone's fawning about, who as a Hispanic won in like a 50% Hispanic district against some old white dude, so shocker.
Or
she's part of the
somebody or other.
She's part of the Democratic Socialists, and their position is abolish. I don't know if you saw these tweets go out. First of all, they were going around praising communism. There was a series of tweets where all the leaders of that party were saying, we love communism, blah, blah, blah. So they were saying that. Then they said their platform includes abolishing not only ICE, but prisons.
Yeah.
Profit.
Yeah.
They want to abolish profit, prisons, and ICE. That's their. And I think that's great. I think they should run on that.
Yeah.
I think if this is where the Democrats are going, which I think in principle is closer to, let's dispense with this gray area and this mixture of nonsense. I mean, this is, if you believe in government power and you want the government to control everyone's life, the economy, what we think, what we speak, at least they're honest about it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know if I wish for that because, I mean, on the one hand, it's good because what is happening is it's pushing away good people from the left. So that is happening, and there's this new walk away movement. This gay guy made a video, and it's gone viral, and
Very good.
he's started this hashtag walk away, where people who are traditionally left, like gays, other minorities, are using this hashtag to say, you know, I'm not going to be part of this. Like the left has become the intolerant group, and the problem is they don't really say what they're walking away to. Like I don't know what's out there for you know, it's nice to know that there are a lot of Democrats who find that distasteful, who find the violence and the intolerance and the racism really icky.
Yeah, I don't think it matters where they're going to.
Yeah.
Maybe
now,
it doesn't. As a first step. Just a pushback.
I think Kanye was a huge moment, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, that I wouldn't say he started the movement, but I think he was almost like he was definitely a surge and a peak for the movement of people walking away from the left. And that's happening, but at the same time, there are a lot of people in America who are just going to go right with the Democratic Socialists. Like let's say the Democrats become full-on socialists, communists or whatever, and they say what they really mean. No prisons, release all the criminals, open borders, let all the terrorists in, let the hordes, the billions of criminal hordes from, you know, around the world to come in here and loot this country. Unchecked. Let's just do that. Like they can say that, and that will turn a lot of people off. But a lot of people just go, okay. And if I don't think that, I'm racist, I guess. If I don't agree with open borders and freeing the prisons and no profits, I guess I'm a racist. And I don't know. It scares me because I feel like that is civil war at that point. Like when it really becomes that, when the lines are that sharp, it is civil war, and it does feel like we're heading toward that. But it feels like we can still kind of stop it. We still have time. You still get the sense that Americans kind of share your values, but at the same time, I also want a surge of people to move away from those crazies, and let's marginalize those people and make them uncool, because they really are. They are for death and destruction.
And I think that is happening to some extent. I think this walk away is part of it, and it's a great first step, and I was really happy to see it. And the video is worth watching. I mean, you know,
yeah, it's worth watching. Just everybody Google "walk away." I don't know who the guy's name is, but a walk away video, it'll come up.
Right.
I was surprised that more gays didn't leave the left after the Pulse nightclub thing. I don't know if you remember that, but you know, a Muslim guy and there have been ties to terrorist organizations, and he was definitely radicalized. He goes into a gay nightclub, and slaughters 50 people. 50 fucking people died. Yeah, and you remember how Obama treated that and how the Justice Department treated that? Like they didn't want to say that it could be a Muslim or Islam or anything. I mean, they just completely whitewashed that.
Despite the fact that Islamists not only persecute homosexuals, I mean, they throw them off of buildings. I mean, it's a crime punishable by death.
And I guess his wife knew about it, and they let her off, you know?
Yeah, and that's typical of the left. They don't want to associate Muslims or Islam with anti-gay or anti-homosexuality.
They want you to pretend like that's not happening.
No, that's just a handful of people.
But they can't pretend forever. And I mean, that's what I'm saying. In that moment, to me, it was obvious that, well, if you're gay, you're lower than just, think about this for a second. We're not going to protect you because we would rather protect Muslims and that ideology and Islam from criticism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was more important to them.
That was more important than protecting gay people.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the left's whole MO, though, is that nothing is anything. I mean, there's oppressors and oppressed. There's America and anti-Americans, and they tend to side with anti-Americans. They don't
Yeah,
really
right.
care what they are.
Yeah, because gay people can be white men, which is their worst person, and they're all Americans. And I'm not saying there aren't American Muslims, there are, but to say that Islam is un-American, I think is an honest statement. I think it is.
Right.
And certainly
And
Sharia law is. You know,
Absolutely.
if you take Islam to the point of its politics, which I think is the problem with Islam today, I guess, is that the politics of it is what everybody's trying to push, or the majority or the vocal minority, whatever.
Yeah, to the extent that Islam's associated with or is inexorably tied to Sharia
Yeah.
and to political life, which I think in a lot of cases
It didn't used to
is.
be that way. I mean, there was like that period of kind of things starting to sort of free up the early part of this century or last
And
century.
there are. I mean, I think is it Zudi Jasser? I think that's his name. There's a Muslim who was on Mark Levin's show who was excellent in portraying this segment of the Muslim community that is very pro-Western in terms
Right.
of their politics, that don't want to conflate the two. And so I think there is a battle within that religion
Yeah.
between the advocates, the radical Islamists and the more Western Muslims. So that's true, but let's face it, this is the second largest religion in the world. They're talking about billions of people. So if 5 or 10% of that religion is radicalized, you're talking about hundreds of millions of people.
Well, but it is
So-
more than that. I mean,
Of
it's
course
pretty
it is.
obviously more
But
than
I'm
that.
saying even if it wasn't, even if it was
Yeah.
10 or 20%, which most polls show it is, it's 10 to 20% are super radical. You're talking about hundreds of millions of people. So,
Yeah.
but anyways,
So that's what when they wouldn't say, yeah, unfortunately Islam doesn't approve of gays. They'll say that all day long about Christians.
right.
Christianity doesn't approve of gay people. What a bunch of bigots. But they won't say it about Muslims.
Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a real incredible hypocrisy. And if I'm gay, and especially if I'm a white male gay, which this guy who did the walkaway video is, I'm gonna start having a problem with that. And maybe it took the guy a couple of years after Pulse nightclub to figure that out, but I guess he finally did. And the left is getting very icky. And I would say anyone who's going to continue to be a Democrat at this point, I mean, I realize that a lot of people really hate Trump. And so, but I think they need to also start hating Maxine Waters and who's that guy out of Minnesota, that Muslim
Oh God.
fuckface guy? The anti-Semitic
Yeah.
Keith Ellison.
Right. That's hype.
Oh, I hate
Linda
him.
Sarsour.
Linda Sarsour. I mean, the Women's March run by that woman. Oh, you just can't go to these women's marches, these rallies run by somebody like her, and be like, "Oh, I'm just innocent. I'm for women's rights."
Yeah, and
It's getting
increasingly
to the point where you can't say that.
right. And increasingly, the left is becoming really racialized in terms of their rhetoric. I mean, the idea that white-skinned people are innately evil is a kind of an original sin.
Right.
And it's becoming it is a religious movement in the sense that they're even saying this is beyond debate, this is beyond reason. White people, white privilege, this is sort of an innate characteristic of white people. And we've talked about this before. I mean, this is
The only reason you're saying that, Doug, is because you're white.
correct. So right, and that's
I think we need to
cited
get
as
a black
proof.
person on here to comment because we are looking through the lens of our whiteness.
So that's cited as proof of your own bigotry, the fact
Right.
that you deny white privilege.
That's
so
right.
it's a no-win situation.
You
and
can't win. You're white. You can't win. You're white. You're racist, and that's it. End of story.
Of course, you would say that because
No
you're white.
discussion. Yeah.
And so this is the kind of rhetoric and the kind of political philosophy that's the first pillar on the road to genocide, and genocidal type thinking. When you dehumanize your enemy, your political enemy, and you turn them into a caricature and sort of and associate them with evil, by on the basis of their skin color. Where do you go from there? And I think that's why you're saying, and so many people think that civil war is going to come, because there's no reasoning with that philosophy.
And okay, if I'm ranking rights, I mean, I'm for gay marriage, but that's a relatively new thing that's come out, Was the world such a horrible place 20 years ago? Like, was it so horrible to be a gay person in America 20 years ago or 10 years ago, before you could get married? I'm not saying that didn't suck. I'm glad that gay people can get married now. I was always for that. But if I'm ranking rights, I would give up that right and abortion rights for First Amendment rights. If I have to, so what side am I going to pick? I'm picking the right. I know that's a little bit controversial among our circle of objectivists, because they seem to think, the left and the right are both bad. They're both right killers. Except, look at what the left wants to do. Look at where they're at, really. It isn't even a contest anymore.
Right.
I would rather go back to the 50s, white gloves, hats, no abortions, than go to the socialist utopia of the left.
Right, re-education
which
centers.
is where we're headed. That is where we are headed on the well-funded speeding commuter train.
And to be honest with you, I think that's a little bit of even today, I think it's a bit of a false alternative. I mean,
It is, but you know what I'm saying. I agree with you.
I think most people on the right are actually, especially the libertarian right, are fine with gay marriage.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially the young Republicans, overwhelmingly are totally for gay marriage.
Well, they might have religious objections on moral grounds. I know religious people that are morally opposed to gay marriage, but legally they understand that it's a right. So they can distinguish the two. They can say, I'm morally against homosexuality, or I don't approve of gay marriage, but they wouldn't stop it. I mean, there are, of course, people that would stop it, but I think I'm
hearing people in our circle say stuff like, well, it's not good that Trump gets to put in another Supreme Court justice, because then Roe v. Wade could get overturned. And it's like, what are you fucking talking about? I don't care about Roe v. Wade. We're fighting for our First Amendment. If more people like Justice Kagan get on that court, our First Amendment is gone. And our Second Amendment. We are at the end here. We are dealing with the bare minimum rights. It doesn't, like abortion, if that goes back to the states to be decided, I'm supposed to get upset about that? And I'm supposed to trade that for my First Amendment right? That's insanity to me. And I think gay people are figuring that out. I think I would, if I were gay, I would rather ally with people who were constitutionalists and who even were traditionalists in terms of the culture. Even these people who want women to wear white gloves and hats. I would rather be with them and this kind of wholesome Americanism.
You just like white gloves and hats.
I kind of do. It's a fashion choice. But you know what I'm trying to that Laura Ingalls Wilder. I would rather be in a culture that reveres Laura Ingalls Wilder and that world, which honestly, that's kind of like that Christian wholesomeness that, okay, let's go back 100 years. Is that so terrible compared to where the left wants to take us? Venezuela? Yeah. Or Soviet Russia?
Yeah, I think freedom of speech is the last step. It's the last stage of dictatorship. Once that goes, we're done.
If people like Kagan had her way, it would already be done. Not only would we not be able to speak, and Facebook and all the social media companies are on this side of that, that we shouldn't be allowed to speak. And we also, not only that, should promote their causes. We should be forced to promote what we don't even agree with and advocate for.
Well, of course, and that's the whole idea of socialism is there's a central planning committee that knows what's in your interest, that decides that people are stupid, and so we need experts to decide what's good for you. And that's the essence of the left's entire philosophy is we know what's best for you. We know what job you should have. We know what industries are important. We know how to tell the weather 100 years from now. We know what you should think, what you should say, what's good, what's moral. We know everything.
And that isn't to say that there aren't people on the right who are also, they want to kind of run things in their own image. But I really don't think that it's the vast majority of people that I run into and talk to actually are pro First Amendment. They're pro religious freedom. They're pro Second Amendment. These are not the ideas of tyrants.
No.
So walk away. If you're listening and you're on the left, walk away. If you are an objectivist and you lean left and you're listening, think about that for a second, who you're allying yourself with and what is the trade that you're making. Like I hear people freaking out about these tariffs, but they don't freak out about the First Amendment. And that is inverted. That is wrong. Trade is not as important as freedom of speech. And hopefully we don't have to choose. But if we're going to choose, I'm choosing the side that's going to promote my right to speak and my right to have a gun.
It's preposterous to even compare the two. We have, 800 different taxes on us right now, from the income tax to the VAT tax to state income tax to sales tax, on and on and on and on. So there's some tariffs that they're putting on some other, that big effing deal compared to.
By the way, there are already tariffs. It's not like we didn't have tariffs. We have tariffs. It's just different tariffs. And
yes,
I don't like the high steel tariffs. I'm not for that, I don't know how this is going to play out. But
well, I think you have to distinguish when you're talking about tariffs between tariffs for foreign policy or military threat type purposes.
Right.
And, just mercantilism type tariffs where.
Like the sugar tariff.
Yeah, it's different to say, the Chinese are a military threat, or they're stealing our IP, or, you're trying to get to a fair playing field or whatever. There's legitimate reasons to consider that.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a national security issue in terms of cultivating some primary industries in terms of like metal production and base metals and things like that. So I get some of that. Is Canada really a threat? Do we need to be throwing tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum? Probably not. But anyways, I think that's like a minor issue compared to what the left is after, which is essentially shutting down free speech.
And economically, I would say that their environmental regulations are more crushing to business than any tariff could be. And I see that out here in California, and the way the severe environmentalism is crushing to development and to anything other than tech, like the intellectual company growth, which is like the big industry here, Hollywood and Silicon Valley. But everything else is just stagnant. Crushed because of environmentalism. And
that's a great point.
You can't even get water here.
Think of the crushing effects of environmentalism and the potential throttling of industrial civilization that's imagined by the real hardcore progressives in terms of their environmental policy, and compare that to some tariffs on China, on Chinese T-shirts or something. Really? You're going to compare those two? It's ridiculous. And yeah, it would be nice to not have any of it. It would be nice to not have environmentalism, and it would be nice to not have tariffs or any taxes. But the real world is that here's some choices that you really have.
That's right. And,
and you can push back against Trump's stuff.
That's right.
It doesn't mean he's perfect. Rail against it. But what I'm hearing from people is tariffs. Oh, my God, tariffs.
Trump's an evil dictator. Ah!
Come on.
I know. It's crazy. It's like, how about you join the side that's pro-First Amendment, pro-Second Amendment, generally pro-business, join that side, and then help them discover free trade.
Exactly.
That's
really well
how
put.
we should do it. Rather, there's nobody there on the left that is your friend. Nobody at this point. So, and that's our show for today. Can you believe we've been talking for an hour already?
Happy 4th.
That's our show. It's kind of like was it a sad show, Doug? Do you think that was a bummer show?
Yes.
Yeah.
Our shows try to be funny, and they really aren't. They're very.
That was a
sober.
serious conversation. We need. All right, that's it for our show today. Thanks to all you listeners, especially my elite squad. You guys are so cool. If you enjoy the show, consider joining my Patreon elite squad. We are completely fan funded, so we need you to keep doing this. Do me a favor, you guys. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, House of Sunny, and my Facebook page, Sunny Lohman. Those are the two places that I post things on. And you can subscribe to The Rational Capitalist on Facebook for more of Doug's genius. Right? Is that pretty much where people should go find you, Doug?
Yeah, The Rational Capitalist or theratcap.com.
All right.
Either one.
So I lined up a special guest for next week, a lawyer who wanted to talk about Trump's selection to the Supreme Court and kind of what we're looking for. And so we're going to have him on maybe for 15 minutes or so. We'll talk about that. We'll try to be more funny next time. I'm gonna come with some actual jokes next week.
I have some jokes too, but
we'll talk Star Wars. You've been wanting to talk about Star Wars for 2 weeks.
Yes.
So we're gonna do that. We're gonna talk about Solo, some Star Wars stuff. We'll make it a little bit more fun. All right. Happy 4th of July to everybody. Happy Independence Week, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the House of Sunny podcast. Go check out Sunny on YouTube at her channel, House of Sunny. Everything Sunny does is fan-funded. And because she's likely to get kicked off and demonetized on every platform at some point, please support her over at patreon.com/House of Sunny. Become one of Sunny's elite squad and have access to behind-the-scenes footage, t-shirts, special events, and more.